Pocahontas. Back during the beginning of the Disney Renaissance, when movies like The Little Mermaid and Aladdin brought them back to the top of the animation world, they had a crazy idea that could potentially top what they have previously achieved. Where Beauty and the Beast was so good to get a Best Picture nomination at the Oscars, this would be the one to win it. With that said, those at Disney who were lucky enough to be a part of this project were completely fueled with enthusiasm and motivation that they were working on something legendary. More so than the others who were working on some small side project that doesn't seem to be important. What was the name again? The Lion King or something like that, I don't know. But by the time that the movie finally came into fruition, the result came a bit different than they would probably expect. Did it turn out to be the epic masterpiece that they were hoping for? Or did they really miss their mark on this one? Let's find out. The story. The one thing I could say about this is that I can definitely see the potential. What Disney was aiming for with the story was to tell the classic romantic tale in the similar veins of works like Romeo and Juliet, West Side Story, and many more, but with the theme of the New World with the English and the Native Americans. This is why the centerpiece of the story is about the relationship between Pocahontas and John Smith, where the biggest conflict with their love is the battle between their people, despite how they were able to learn from one another about their own culture. On top of that, with the entire setting being the discovery of the New World, the movie was able to integrate a message about racism and how a prejudiced mindset can cause nothing but harm on both sides. It feels like it has all the right pieces in order to tell an epic story. So, what can go wrong? Well, there is one thing. The biggest issue that this movie has is that it doesn't have a focus on its tone. It doesn't know if it wants to be a movie for either adults or just kids. It's a very strange issue coming from Disney, considering how many of their most beloved projects are still remembered to this day because they would include core elements that would charm and entertain both kids and adults. Here, however, these elements are completely split to where they can only please one type of audience at a time, and they end up not mixing well. There are times when it would start out with Miko and Percy doing their usual Tom and Jerry routine, and then a few minutes later... Yeah, not so subtle on changing the mood. The tone for kids is too childish and goofy for adults, and the tone for adults are too complex and sometimes too heavy-handed for kids. Don't get me wrong though, what works in the story still works very well, and the adult stuff is powerful while the kid stuff can still get a few cute laughs. It's just that the tone would constantly have a massive shift to where it's almost like they're giving us two completely different stories at the same time. The animation. No matter what people say about this movie, there is no denying how the animation is just spectacular. What is interesting to note is how this is one of Disney's more realistic looking features, where they even have to cut down many elements from the classic Disney style in order to gain more believability rather than artistry. This is especially prominent in the character design, where the facial features are meant to look more anatomically correct, and even the Native Americans have a more respectable design. Of course, not everyone is trying to look lifelike. The animals are a prominent example of a more cartoonish style, but it isn't too different to look out of place from the rest of the world. The same can be said with the character animation, going less for squash and stretch and rely on more natural and subtle movements to bring out the character's emotions. And then you have the backgrounds. This would be where the artistry is applied a lot more. Funny enough, it used a limited color palette to match nature's real colors, but they were able to capture the beauty of Pocahontas' environment with all the green, blue, brown, pink, purple, and red. Definitely up there as one of Disney's best looking natural landscapes next to Bambi and Sleeping Beauty.
Just around the river bend. Should I choose the smoothest course?
But if that wasn't enough to amaze audiences with what they see, the movie also incorporates many great animated effects and uses them to their full potential. With the ways they use smoke to depict imagery, the water when it can be raging or calm, the lighting, or whenever you see the elements blowing in the wind, It really elevates the quality of the animation to make it look as good as the Disney animated films before it. This is one of those Disney films where it may not have it in the writing, but the animation is just too beautiful to ignore. The characters. It's honestly weird to describe because the chemistry of the main characters work, but there really isn't much to them individually. Here's what I mean. Pocahontas is a free-spirited woman who falls in love with a white man, while John Smith is a more adventurous guy who is in love with a native girl. That's it. I tried thinking about why there isn't much to these characters, yet feel so invested by their love, and I think I might have an answer. It's not the factor of seeing them together. It's more what their love means to the environment around them. How two worlds suddenly collide in a small way that would end up with massive consequences. It's a strange balance between peace and war, and the romance plays the element of peace, which is why we root for it. Going back to the cast, there really isn't a lot to say about them either, since a lot of them are as underdeveloped as Pocahontas and John Smith. Thomas and Nakoma are the best friends from each side. Chief Powhatan is the leader and Pocahontas' father, while Miko, Percy, Flit, and Wiggins are the comic relief who provide the movie's more cartoony side. There are a few standout characters though that are more unique, including Grandmother Willow, who is Pocahontas' guide on life. Admittedly, as fun as she can be, she can feel out of place considering how she is the only mystical element of this feature.
Hello, John Smith.
Pocahontas, that tree is talking to me.
Then you should talk back.
And then there's Governor Radcliffe, one of the more interesting characters who actually take benefit of the time period that the film is set in. He encompasses the European corruption of the 17th century, where the belief was that going to the New World would be a get-rich-quick scheme to get gold. With his mind so preoccupied with the reward, he shows no care for what's around him and only uses his own ideologies to settle with something new that he encounters. I would even say that Radcliffe is a rather fascinating Disney villain. The characters are fine as they are, and it's easy to get emotionally invested in them. It's just there isn't a lot to some of them. The songs. Like the animation, the songs hit their mark perfectly for what they're trying to do. Similar to how Pocahontas and John Smith live in completely different cultures, there are two different styles that encompass the music. The first being from the 17th century British style, with songs like the Virginia Company and Mine, Mine, Mine provoke a Baroque air onto its score, discussing about who these visitors are and what is their goal.
In 1607, we sailed the open sea, for glory, God, and gold, and the Virginia Company.
It's mine, mine, mine for the taking. It's mine, boys, mine in that gold.
The other style is the traditional Native American type, where each song goes into people's connection with nature, including songs like Just Around the River Bend and Listen to Your Heart.
Listen with your heart, you will understand.
However, out of all the songs in the feature, two of them were able to stand out as their greatest. There's Colors of the Wind, the Oscar-winning song that is similar to the other native songs in this film, but this one holds a strong message of how Pocahontas views the earth and how she respects it, while explaining that to a newcomer like John Smith.
But if you walk the footsteps of a stranger, you'll learn things you never knew you never knew.
And then there's Savages, the ultimate clash between the colonizers and the natives, which blends the two song styles to prepare them for battle.
Then we sound the drums of war.
Let's go get a few men.
Savages, savages,
Now it's up to you, men.
savages, savages.
If there's one thing I would have to criticize here, it would have to be Steady as the Beating Drum. It's a great traditional native song on its own, but when watching the movie, it's pretty obvious when they would switch the voice from Russell Means to Jim Cummings.
They're steady as the steady beating drum.
Your mother wore this for our wedding. It was her dream to see you wear it at your...
I can guarantee for many people, the songs will be the first thing they'll remember about this movie, and they will remember them well. Honestly, I could see how this could have been one of Disney's best animated features. There's definitely a lot of amazing work put into this, like the animation is phenomenal, the songs are unforgettable, and the film can have some powerful moments. However, what keeps it away from being one of Disney's strongest movies is the confusing tone that doesn't know if it wants to either please kids or adults instead of both at the same time, and characters that aren't as well structured as some of Disney's best, like in Beauty and the Beast or Zootopia. Don't get me wrong though, Pocahontas is still a really good movie that's worth watching. It's just not as good as the films that came out before it from the studio. It's no masterpiece like what the animators were hoping it would be when making it, but it was still a noble effort that's worth adding to the Disney collection. Hey guys, this is AniMat's. Now, when it comes to Pocahontas, I gotta say that when you look into the direction that they wanted to go with that movie, it actually is very fascinating because they were pretty much doing things unlike any of the previous animated features that they have already done. And the reason why I say that is because when you look at the time period when they started production on this movie, you could tell that the crew at Disney was extremely motivated over the fact that Beauty and the Beast actually achieved the impossible and made an animated feature that got an Oscar nomination for Best Picture. I mean, even to this day, it is almost unheard of. So, with that said, like I said in the review before actually, where Beauty and the Beast got the nomination, they want to make sure that Pocahontas would go and get the win. So that's basically what they wanted to do with Pocahontas, is not make a Disney movie, but make a Best Picture movie. And you could tell by that because there were many elements that they have never done so in many of the previous Disney films. Like, they try to make it more realistic than it was before with, it's a lot more historically accurate than previous Disney films. The animation style is more rooted to reality, and also even the time period and where everything is more set. There isn't a lot of magical elements with the exception of Grandmother Willow. That, and also they try to do a lot more serious subjects. Like, instead of just doing the usual, like, believe in yourself, like, always have hope or grant a wish and stuff like that, like, they try to go into more serious subjects like racism and, you know, like having this big romantic epic where the consequences are very, very serious when two different worlds would collide together and try to have love, but instead there's a lot of bloodshed that would actually happen. Well, I mean, it is a Disney movie, but trust me, if it had a higher rating, like, you would see a lot more blood in this movie. But other than that, yeah, you could definitely tell that it's trying to go and try to get that Best Picture nomination, but then, in the middle of the production, they realize that they still want to try to appeal to families. And that's where the element of cartoons start to kick in, like with Miko, with Flit, with Percy, with Wiggins. And that's where the big conflict comes in. Because it's almost unheard of when you have, like, a Best Picture movie trying to simultaneously appeal for kids. Like, it's trying to be extremely serious, but then there are factors that's just not too serious. And that's where you get the biggest problem of the movie. That's where you get that giant conflict. And that's why to this day, Pocahontas is not necessarily viewed as big as any of the other Disney movies that came before it. Like, it's not as legendary as, like, The Little Mermaid, or Aladdin, or Beauty and the Beast, or even The Lion King, which is very ironic considering that The Lion King was supposed to be the side project while the main event is supposed to be Pocahontas. But yeah, but overall though, I don't want to like put down Pocahontas a lot, but I will say like this is one of those movies that whatever it did right, it did amazingly, especially with the songs, and the animation is absolutely phenomenal. So it still works very well on its own. It's just that I guess Disney set the bar a little bit too high on this one. But anyways, that is pretty much it with Pocahontas. And now that it's time, now it is time that we go and move on to a Patreon request. Yes, and this time it's going to be coming from Chris Estrada. So I just want to say right now that if you guys would like to be like Chris and you want to go and support my work and get some awesome rewards at the same time, then all you have to do is go to patreon.com/animat. But at the same time, if you guys would like to suggest to me an animated film you would like me to review and I would put onto the animation hat, then all you have to do is write me an email at animatsreviews@gmail.com. So, with all that said, what is it that Chris suggests me to go and review? Well, interestingly enough, I am actually going to go back to an animated feature that I have reviewed some time ago. And this one, admittedly, I actually really enjoyed and really appreciated. I would dare say that it's one, it's actually a pretty underrated animated feature. Like, even though conceptually it's not the best, but in terms of the execution, it's absolutely phenomenal. And the studio that made it, like, to this day, they still haven't pulled off something that's as good as this. And so far, it remains just as its only thing. It was, like, just that movie in itself. And, you know, it's one of those few things that we could just appreciate it, that it's only that and that's it. It didn't expand upon a franchise. That is until frickin' recently. Because somehow, Sony Pictures Animation won't let us have anything nice.
Sun is out and it feels like it's always gonna stay. Let this last forever, turn tomorrow into yesterday.
And it came so highly recommended.